Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Data Resilience SpectrumCast. I am Steve Keniston, your host, as joined as always by Randy Arsenault, our co-host. Hey, Randy.
What's up, Steve?
And we have Trisha Jang, our subject matter expert.
Hey, Steve.
And a lot of you may notice Sean Sperry not with us today. Sean got stuck teaching our illustrious data resilience products and technologies, but the nice thing is we are joined by Jason Beal from AvePoint, Senior Vice President of Channels. Jason, take a moment and introduce yourself and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here. So yeah, I'm Jason Beal and I lead AvePoint's global channel and partner ecosystems business. I've been with AvePoint a little over 6 months now. So I joined in December 2020 and have previously had experience both in distribution and at a global cybersecurity vendor. So it's great to be here. AvePoint's making a ton of investments in its partners and its channel ecosystem. We're set to go public soon. And so we're going to have even more capital to invest in our channel partner relationships.
That's great. So newbie, and he has cyber expertise, Randy. That'll be good for our wheel of misfortune later on, huh?
Brilliant. Yeah, I love it. Cool.
Fantastic. So this is another episode of the SpectrumCast where we are talking to technology partners of IBM who've joined the IBM kind of portfolio, where IBM can now sell directly these solutions right from our own paper. And we're pretty excited about it. And these partners add technology value to our existing set of customers and install base and technology they're already running. So Jason, tell me a little bit about maybe how this came about and kind of your thoughts around it.
Well, first I'll say, we're excited about the partnership. In my career at various times, I've worked with various IBM entities all around the globe, obviously a market leader, but also one that's extremely, has always been a great partner, right? And we have a lot of synergies with our technology. IBM obviously has incredible reach and does an amazing job with its customers. So we're fortunate and we're proud to be a part of this particular SpectrumCast offering.
Great. Thanks. So can you tell me a little bit about what AvePoint does to complement the Spectrum Protect portfolio for our listeners out there?
Sure. So AvePoint has, let's say we've grown up really being experts on the Microsoft platform. We have about 20 years of really doing close development, for and with Microsoft, originally in the SharePoint, and then as Microsoft's cloud ecosystem and their products continue to evolve, AvePoint was right there. Office 365, Teams, Dynamics, etc. So we have over 800 developers around the world that work really closely, have expertise. And I think that when you look across the universe, there's certainly different backup vendors that specialize in different technologies, but for the IBM Spectrum Protect, I think the expertise, the level of granularity, the functionality that AvePoint can offer on Microsoft platform in particular is one of the reasons that IBM has chosen to partner with AvePoint for the Spectrum Protect.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think if you think about Spectrum Protect and how long it's been around, I mean, clearly, and I always say this in all of our meetings with customers, there isn't a corner case that we haven't seen. I mean, we've seen a lot of tricks and stuff that happen in client sites, and we fix them. But we've been around for a while, and we've stuck real hard to some of the core Unix and Linux things that we do. But when you move into Microsoft, all of a sudden you open up a whole new world. And Trisha, I have to imagine you see a lot of that as well, right?
Yeah, and the thing I really like about AvePoint is they've been with Spectrum Protect for a long time. We've been partnering with them. So what has changed, Jason? Anything new, any new features or functions that have come out recently that we should highlight for our Spectrum Protect and SharePoint users?
Well, I think, the move to the cloud, right, in the last, starting a decade ago, but really started to accelerate in the last half a decade. And then in the last year, this incredible acceleration due primarily to addressing some of the needs around COVID. has just moved hundreds of millions of more employees, right, government entities, students to the cloud. And I think Microsoft most recently had quoted that they had over 100 million more daily active users on Teams. That's becoming a kind of the platform of choice. So the move from SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint Cloud, from Exchange to Office 365, and then quite frankly, there were a number of, let's call them, shadow IT vendors that were inside of end customers that are now also, we're seeing a migration from those into Teams. And so the functionality within AvePoint's backup products and, some of our records management and governance is really, we've really focused on, kind of pure cloud solutions.
I would imagine, you mentioned that there's a lot of movement within the client base toward Microsoft Teams. I would imagine that, the global pandemic probably played a role in that as one of the technologies that people were sort of rapidly, in some cases forced to adopt in order to continue functioning. I mean, did you see a huge spike in demand over the past, 12 months or so? And how has that affected your business, and how have you responded to that?
So I will say yes and no. Okay, so when we talk about the daily active users, to be fair, a lot of those daily active users are still using only a portion of the Teams functionality. Many are, for instance, would still be using just a calling feature. And so some of the technologies that an IBM or an AvePoint would make available to users of Teams, they're not necessarily needing to harness all of that functionality. So that's the no part of the answer. The yes part of the answer is if you've seen some of our results and you've seen some of the growth, if I were to share with you some of the statistics in the pipeline, we're certainly seeing it evidenced, in our growth, that there are now more and more users that are trying to use more functionality within O365 and within Teams. We keep hearing the same feedback from our mutual customers, is that we rushed everybody onto some of these collaboration platforms or onto O365 and Teams or SharePoint Online. We had to rush them on. And normally in years past, there would have been a lot more time around planning, due diligence, documenting things for the employees, user training, right? What I call user guiding. And unfortunately, companies, schools, government entities just did not have that luxury during COVID. Everybody was kind of rushed on. So we're hearing this feedback that, boy, we're on, and now we need to really make sure that we've got everything both backed up and buttoned up, right? So that all of the proper controls are in place for backing up the information and then restoring at a granular level when needed. But at the same time, looking a lot of that access controls, policies, permissions, so that you're not sharing the wrong information with the wrong folks.
Yeah, that's been the good news, bad news, I guess, of at least in our field, in the technology field in general during the pandemic, is that it forced a lot of people and a lot of organizations to rethink their security, their deployment, their distributed network, their VPN strategy. I mean, a lot of things that they might otherwise have maybe not put as many cycles into, and they were required, or they were necessitated to kind of go do that and do it in a fairly rapid way. So difficult work, but the end result of that is it seems like a lot of organizations now are much more conscientious about how they do security, how they architect their backups, and how they do collaboration. So it's an interesting convergence of macro effects all happening at the same time, which is, I guess, good for all of us. So.
Yeah, and they talk, in the industry, you often hear this term, these like shared responsibility models, right? So whether it's cyber, whether it's backup, whether it's, public cloud security, there is a shared responsibility, right, between the user and between the partner / technology provider, an IBM or an AvePoint. And when so many millions of folks were moved so quickly onto these various platforms, they didn't always, again, have that training on what were their responsibilities, right? And Microsoft makes certain functionality out of the box, but is that sufficient to meet the needs of individual customers, individual markets or industries, and particularly regulated industries? Probably not in all cases. So that's why with technology like IBM and AvePoint, and then the experts and the engineers that we have on our team can work with our mutual customers to really understand their needs and help them to implement that shared responsibility model around backup and governance.
I have to say, I've been fairly impressed around the fact that, my dad having come from the IT space, and now I'm going to really kind of date myself here, right? But, the evolution of, hey, I want to upgrade my Exchange server from 2003 to 2005 and skip a bunch of years and go to 2010, and then it's Microsoft 2020, and now it's the Microsoft 365 products. And, we're hearing a lot of good feedback, and clients moving down that chain faster and faster. And now that it's a hosted service, right, they get all those updates for free. I'm assuming that's going to be really good for the AvePoint business model, number one. And number two, the continued protection of that information as it continues to evolve is going to be, it's a lot of work, but I'm sure it's very valuable to the folks that need it, right?
Yeah, I think a little bit what you're alluding to is around this, the benefits of a platform approach and the customer, the trend around vendor consolidation, right? So an IBM is a perfect example, right? IBM, from its engineering and its product capacity, isn't looking at point products. It's how can we help an end customer, right, consolidate so many different point products that don't talk to one another, that have different management consoles, aren't integrating and sharing intelligence, right? That is extremely difficult for end customers to try to manage, and they're trying to shrink the number of different vendors and tools in their portfolio for ease of management, right? And to kind of maximize their human capital. And IBM and AvePoint were a platform play, right? We can displace multiple vendor point products and give the customer a much better experience. And that better experience, again, it lends itself to better manageability and ultimately better protection and less holes.
So Jason, every time I do a tool section, and I try and give users an idea of where can you go for more information or some good insight. So you talked about all these new people coming into this area, trying to consolidate, understand what's out there. What would your tip be for where they can go to learn more about the AvePoint solution?
I think the easiest place to start would be avepoint.com. We have a lot of great information on the website, and you can then link into our YouTube. We've kind of followed the trend that nowadays those that are consumers are looking to get information in bite-sized chunks and to get that via video. And so we've really defaulted and had a preference for making digestible, consumable videos about the value proposition and about the technology, be them 1-minute videos, 10-minute videos, or 30-minute videos. So yeah, I'd say avepoint.com and or our YouTube page.
Randy, did you see what Trisha did there? She handed the tooltip over to Jason. That was pretty impressive.
That was clever. Yeah, that's quality content right there for sure.
Keeping on that thought process also, Jason, right? Just digging into a little bit of the relationship between IBM and AvePoint. So our sellers are going to be out there, and I think the video channel is good to learn about the products and the technology. If the folks in the field need a little help working on, some collaborating with a customer about the right solution and that sort of thing, what's the best way for them to, how are you guys kind of distributed throughout the geographies and that sort of thing? I'm sure not all calls go to you, but you guys got a worldwide team? We got people in different regions we can work with?
Absolutely. So at the beginning, I had talked about the fact that, we're going public, and our CEO has publicly stated that channel is one of the largest, growth and investment vectors as we move public. So I've joined the company in December, and I have a philosophy in working with partners is that you need to win the hearts and minds of the partner engineering and the technical teams. And so where I biased my headcount investment asks internally were in channel SE resources, channel solutions engineers, and in another role called partner technical success managers. And in those where we want to work closely with IBM sellers, IBM engineers, we have a team around the globe when we do have mutual customer opportunities, or if there's just any additional support or information that we can provide, additional go-to-market solutions. So I have a global channel organization, and I would say that we are, as a company, we are pivoting really, really quickly from a primarily direct sales model in certain geos to a primarily indirect sales model, and we're going to have the headcount to help partners and help the IBM sales team and the engineering team.
That's great. I know in a lot of cases, and you guys aren't a startup company, but startup companies want to work with IBM, and I don't think they realize the volume of people that we have on the field and the number of customers we have that when you've got a great solution like AvePoint has, and you want to partner together and go deliver it, sometimes we're going to need help for the first few months, kind of getting over that hurdle of making sure we're deploying it right, and as important as helping the customer do the right thing, right? We don't want to have them constantly calling support or your support, our support. What are the issues, right? We want to deploy correctly the first time. So I like your thought process and being more technical. I like the fact that you're going down the SE road first. That's good.
Yeah, from a more of a commercial standpoint, I also have two other philosophies. One, revenue equals relevance, right? For your partnerships, and the second is it's quality over quantity. Right, many OEMs or ISVs will brag about the number, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of partners that they have around the world, and that might be a fit for their technology, but for, I think, the sophistication, the complexity of AvePoint technology, and if you look at a joint solution like Spectrum Protect, what you want are real, meaningful, strategic, and committed relationships. So for all of the partner account teams and the channel teams and the channel engineering teams that I'll employ around the world, we're looking for a very small number of strategic partnerships, and IBM is certainly one of those.
And I would just like to give kudos for think of data as your baby. That's a fairly brilliant
I love that
tagline and marketing strategy. Very emotionally impactful.
I like that.
All right.
Data supports you instead of the baby. You got to support it. So
That's a great point. That's a great point.
All right, Randy, let's take now that we've got Jason here, who's a security guy. Let's take a spin on the wheel of misfortune and see
let's do it.
What lays up for us today.
Let's see what's happening in the world. So let's see. Do we want to do? I think we did ransomware attacks last time. So let's do a more broad cyber attack search. Okay. Oh, interesting. So the EU, so we're not the only victims of cyber attacks here in the US. The EU wants to develop kind of an emergency, and I heard something about this on the BBC the other day, kind of a quick response team to handle any of these like emergency cyber attacks. So, probably driven by a lot of the attacks that we've seen on our shores recently. Other parts of the world are beginning to take this more seriously and try to develop mitigation strategies. I suppose in some ways learning from our best practices and some of the problems that we've experienced and some of our organizations have experienced here. So it's kind of an interesting, I just realized I forgot to share my screen. Sorry. There we go. So, So anyway, this is, and not unlike the memo that the White House released a couple of weeks ago after the Colonial Pipeline attacks, stating that organizations have to begin taking a much more active role in their prevention and also their recovery. So again, good news for us, I suppose, in the sense that, data protection and security in general is becoming much, much, much more important and prevalent and more time critical. So I think that drives a lot of demand for the kind of solutions that we position and sell and support. So Jason, love to hear your perspective on this. I'm sure you talk about this a lot probably on your end.
Yeah, we do. And speaking of EU, I'm sure IBM as well for nearly a decade has I would say, benefited in a way from the GDPR that I think the European Union was probably, leading across the globe at going out and making regulations around data protection. And it gave a framework and expectations for companies, right, on protecting their data, protecting their environments. And that certainly, was a forcing function in many cases for companies, entities investing in their cyber defense and in their and in data backup infrastructure. What was always interesting to me, and I think it plays a little bit here into the articles that you're showing, was that it was a invitation for companies to, in their words, make best effort, right? They always talked about using state-of-the-art technologies and industry best practices and making best efforts. GDPR wasn't about you can't be breached or boy, you better not let anything happen. It's, are you trying, right? Do you have process? Do you have state-of-the-art technology? Do you have people? And obviously, are you reporting the breaches when they happen in a necessary amount of time? But it's a not a way to point finger, point fault, or have a fine for a fine's sake, but just encouraging organizations to not neglect or not go cheap, right? So investing in infrastructure and tools and state-of-the-art technology from an IBM or an AvePoint, it shows that effort, right? We're trying. And here too, with their latest announcements on this kind of cyber dispatch and emergency team, it's like, hey, we're here to help. We know you may be breached. And when you do, like, call in, right? Be transparent, report it, ask for help, and we're there to help you. So I think it's the right approach rather than just, again, kind of pointing fingers or having punitive fines if heaven forbid somebody is breached. It's putting together some framework, some motivation, some encouragement to try, right? Make their best efforts to stop the bad guys.
Because there won't always be the benevolent hackers like the ones who apparently attacked the Irish healthcare system and then, before extracting any ransom, actually gave them the key to correct the problem and prevent the breach. So that's not likely to happen very often.
Those are the minority, yeah, certainly.
Yes, very much so. Cool. Well, thanks, Jason. Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. And we talk about this every week on the podcast because it's obviously a huge problem and a growing problem, and it's ramping up pretty aggressively. So I think it's interesting always, we have a tendency to be a little myopic or parochial about it, but it's obviously happening all over the world. And it's, the same bad actors, in some cases, state-sponsored groups and organizations that are responsible for these attacks. And it's, incumbent upon us to do everything we can to help our clients and our industries that we support be as prepared and ready as possible and mitigate as effectively and quickly as possible when those things do happen.
Yeah. And I mean, because while the good guys, right, our technology is getting better and access to more computing power. Well, so too do the bad guys have access to more sophisticated technologies, AI, public cloud. So it's much easier, much less costly for them to launch these various attacks and to keep constantly updating their malware. Whereas before it used to take a massive effort or a state-sponsored effort to put together a piece of malware to launch attacks. Now it can happen pretty quickly and at a low cost.
Yeah. And you layer on the opacity associated with cryptocurrency as a means of extracting a ransom, and you get a perfect storm of, the explosive growth and attacks. So it's a lot of work ahead for all of us, but glad that we're working together, especially in the Microsoft space, because obviously huge, pervasive, everywhere, every industry, every customer. So
yeah, with Microsoft, we talked earlier around this move to these collaboration platforms, and there is we've heard of subcategories of cybersecurity like endpoint security or public cloud security and perimeter security. There is now a subcategory around collaboration security, and at AvePoint we have a collaboration security platform, which is a little bit DLP, a little bit of governance, a lot of backup, a lot of granular restore, a little bit of team sprawl prevention and storage deduplication. But they always say it's still 90% of the time it's some of the data leakage, or opening doors all around hackers are because of human error, right? So the more that we can do as partners, IBM and AvePoint and some of our downstream partners to help train organization and provide their employees the tools to defend against, the better it'll be for all of us.
Agreed. Oh, you're on mute,
You're
Steve.
on mute, Steve.
I think it's really interesting the space you come from, Jason, from the standpoint of there was security, and we've been going through this as we watch data protection evolve. It used to be backup, then it was recovery, and then it was about RPO and RTO, and then it was about modern data protection, and now we're talking about data resilience. And it always has been, in IBM as a multi-billion-dollar business around security, keeping the bad actors out. And now you're on the side of the fence of how do you recover when they get in? Because it's not if anymore; it's they're gonna get in, right?
Yeah.
And slowly, I think we're going to see that line between the two start to get really, really fuzzy, right? And we're going to have to all be good at doing all things to make sure we're as well protected as possible.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, we talked a lot around really just the due diligence and around policies and permissions, and that has to be a foundation to ensure that when companies are first, setting up their collaboration suites, that the down to an individual file level, right? That you have the right governance to make sure that you're going to defend that file from either make it extremely hard for the bad guys to get to, or to make it very hard for the employees to accidentally leak that particular piece of data. So a very comprehensive backup strategy, like granular down to the file level, it's critical these days.
Yeah, no, I understand. Jason, it's been wonderful having you on the program. And I think I know IBM is really looking forward to having AvePoint as a part of its arsenal of weapons we can use to help our customer and our install base. Randy, I want to thank you as always for our spin on the wheel of misfortune. And Tricia, thank you very much. You don't seem too tan from Tahoe last week. Did you get a big tan?
No, it was, hey, it was so hot. You had to be on the golf course with lots of hats and sunscreen. So, yeah.
That's very responsible. Good for you.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
And Jason, thanks. Let me add my thanks as well. Thanks for joining us. It sounds like you got a busy day. We appreciate you taking a few minutes with us.
No, I really appreciate the invitation, the opportunity to join. This has been fun.
Great. Let's make a plan in maybe a couple of quarters that we sit down and talk about the success we're having and other things we can do together.
That's a deal.
Great.
All right. Awesome.
All right, everyone.
Thanks, Jason.
You guys all have a great day.
Steve.